We set up 7 preconditions, and in the evaluation of the Commission, 3 out of the 7 is not fulfilled. So therefore, there is no reason to discuss anything, because preconditions were not met.
Europe's political landscape is changing faster than ever, and today we're diving into the latest wave of EU politics that's reshaping the continent's future. From new transparency laws shaking up election campaigns, to the evolving relationship between the European Union and China, and a surprising revival of the political centre in the Netherlands, everything happening right now tells a story about the direction Europe is heading. Stay with me till the end, and don't forget to subscribe to EU Politics for regular fact-based updates about what's really happening inside the European Union. The European Commission has just rolled out new, powerful rules on political advertising across all EU member states, effective from October 10th, 2025. These rules are designed to bring long-needed transparency and accountability to political communication, both online and offline. Until now, political parties and lobbying groups could pay for targeted ads on social media using sophisticated data analytics, often without the public knowing who was behind the message. The new EU law changes that. From now on, every political advertisement must clearly state who paid for it, and it must disclose whether the ad was targeted using personal data. That means if you see a sponsored political video or message in your feed during an election, you'll finally know exactly which organisation, campaign or interest group is behind it. The law also sets strict limits on how personal data can be used. Information that reveals someone's ethnicity, religion or political opinions can't be exploited to tailor political messages unless that person gives explicit permission. The goal is to end the shadowy world of micro-targeted political manipulation that became notorious after scandals like Cambridge Analytica. It's not just about transparency, it's about restoring trust in democracy. By ensuring that citizens can see who's trying to influence them, the EU hopes to protect elections from hidden interference, whether from within Europe or from abroad. But implementing this across 27 countries won't be easy. Each member state has its own political culture, media ecosystem, and enforcement system. The real question is how effectively national regulators will monitor and penalise violations. The European Commission wants to make sure no one can buy influence in secret, but unless there's strong enforcement, the rules could remain symbolic. Over the coming months, governments and digital platforms will need to adapt quickly. Tech giants like Meta, Google, and X, formerly Twitter, will face new compliance tests, having to label and archive every political ad shown in EU countries. These changes will make the next wave of European elections the most transparent ever, at least in theory. Now, while Europe is reforming its internal political system, it's also facing massive external challenges. One of the biggest diplomatic stories right now is the EU's complex relationship with China. Since the 2024 European elections, which reshuffled the balance of power in the European Parliament, Brussels has been recalibrating its China strategy. The EU still calls China both a partner, a competitor, and a systemic rival. 3 words that perfectly describe the tension between cooperation and confrontation. Economically, the EU and China remain deeply intertwined. China is the EU's second-largest trading partner, supplying everything from electric vehicle batteries to solar panels. But politically, the tone has changed. European leaders have become more cautious about relying too heavily on Chinese technology and investment. There's growing anxiety over supply chain dependence, particularly in sectors like rare earth minerals, telecommunications, and clean energy. The EU's new approach is called de-risking rather than decoupling. It means Europe doesn't want to cut ties completely, but it does want to reduce its vulnerability. This shift became especially visible after the parliament elections brought in a more fragmented mix of parties, including populist and far-right groups that are skeptical about globalization, but still divided on how to handle China. In recent months, Chinese diplomats have toured European capitals, from Madrid to Paris to Brussels, trying to rebuild trust and expand trade partnerships. Meanwhile, the European Commission has launched several trade investigations into whether Chinese subsidies are unfairly distorting European markets, especially in the electric vehicle industry. If the EU imposes new tariffs or import restrictions, expect tensions to rise. Behind the economic headlines lies a deeper struggle. Europe is trying to define its identity in a world dominated by US-China rivalry. The EU doesn't want to simply follow Washington's lead, but it also can't ignore human rights issues or security concerns around technologies like 5G. Finding the balance between values and interests has never been harder. At the same time, the political dynamics inside the EU are shifting in surprising ways. After years of populist momentum, some parts of Europe are showing signs of a centrist comeback. The clearest example comes from the Netherlands. In a stunning 2025 election, the Liberal centrist party, D66, surged to become one of the leading forces in Dutch politics, matching the far-right Freedom Party, which lost seats after years of dominating headlines. This result stunned observers who thought populism was unstoppable. Many Dutch voters said they were simply tired of political chaos and wanted competence, stability, and pro-European leadership again. This revival of the centre doesn't just matter for the Netherlands. It could signal a broader European trend. Across the continent, voters are realising that endless polarisation, the constant battles between far-right nationalism and far-left radicalism, is exhausting. People want results, not rhetoric. The Dutch result gives hope to those who believe the EU can rebuild consensus-driven politics. It may also strengthen pro-EU coalitions in Brussels, which have struggled in recent years to pass major legislation due to divisions between nationalist and federalist factions. The challenge now will be whether centrists can deliver on their promises or whether voters will swing again in frustration. So, what do all these stories, new ad rules, EU-China tensions, the Dutch election, have in common? Together, they show a Europe caught between old pressures and new ambitions. The European Union wants to protect democracy at home while redefining its place in a turbulent global order. On one hand, there's an effort to make politics more transparent and accountable, symbolised by the new advertising laws. On the other, there's an urgent need to manage foreign relations more strategically, especially with China, the US, and Russia. And within Europe itself, citizens are demanding both stability and change, a paradox that every government must navigate. The next 12 months will be decisive. If the new transparency laws work, they could become a global model for regulating political advertising in the digital age. If the EU handles China skillfully, it could carve out an independent geopolitical identity, balancing trade interests with democratic values. And if centrist forces consolidate in more countries, the EU could enter a new era of pragmatic, cooperative governance, something it badly needs after years of crises over Brexit, migration, and the pandemic. But failure on any of these fronts could also deepen division. The political advertising reform is perhaps the most concrete signal of where Europe is heading, toward accountability, data protection, and citizen empowerment. The EU has often been mocked for bureaucracy, but in this case, its ability to legislate across borders gives it a unique strength. While other democracies struggle with online misinformation, the EU is at least trying to regulate the digital battlefield before it spins out of control. These rules could change how political campaigns are run everywhere, forcing transparency not just on politicians, but also on tech companies and lobbyists. Meanwhile, the EU-China relationship will continue to test Europe's unity. Some member states, especially those in Central and Eastern Europe, still see Chinese investment as essential for growth. Others, like France and Germany, are turning more defensive. The European Commission, under its current leadership, wants to speak with one voice, but achieving that across 27 capitals is easier said than done. Watch closely how Brussels handles the upcoming trade negotiations and whether new anti-subsidy measures are introduced. The outcome could redefine Europe's industrial strategy and its global alliances for the next decade. And don't underestimate the symbolic importance of the Dutch election. In a time when polarisation seems inevitable, the Netherlands just showed that voters can still swing back to the centre when offered credible leadership. If this pattern repeats in upcoming elections in Germany, Spain, or Italy, Europe could see a slow but steady recentering of its politics. That in turn would give the EU more stability to tackle its bigger challenges, from climate policy to defence cooperation. All of these threads, transparency, diplomacy, and political balance, are weaving a new European story. The EU is not static. It's evolving in real time, shaped by digital disruption, global competition, and voter frustration. The next European Parliament elections will likely test all of these reforms. Expect fierce debates about free speech versus disinformation, about sovereignty versus solidarity, and about whether Europe should assert itself more boldly on the world stage. If you care about democracy, privacy, or the future of Europe's place in the world, this is the moment to pay attention.